Hi guys, second snow day. I guess it's kind of Christmas break now. Almost. Today we're going to go through kind of these final steps before you turn in your paper of revision. And we're going to start, this is your homepage right now, these modules, but eventually that's going to change. So go over here to this and select modules. And we're going to go pretty far to the bottom to the section called Argument Final Revision. So make sure you have this up on your own computer, because this is what we're going to be working with a little bit later. Before we start going into these sections, we've done a little bit of work going back through your essay, highlighting all of your claims in one color, and then finding all of your evidence to support those claims and highlighting that another color. If you haven't done this, I suggest doing it when I make comments like this essay is claim heavy. It's an exercise that's going to help you clean that up, because you can visually see at a quick glance that you have so many claims and very minimal evidence to support those claims. So if you haven't done that, I want you to do that. And then when you're finished doing that, we're going to do another highlighting exercise, going back into your essay, and now we're looking for that balance between my voice and outside voices. You want that 80-20, the 80 being your voice. So go back again, pick two colors, one to highlight my voice, your voice, and then another color to highlight outside voices. Something I'm seeing in some papers is people either pulling out chunks of text, outside texts, and block quoting. Some people are pulling 2 to 3 sentences, and it's taking up about 3 lines in a single paragraph. And yes, this is something that you see in argument papers. Block texts are a thing. Sometimes pulling a longer quote is really helpful to your essay. But in this case, you're writing a fairly short essay, short argument essay. What ends up happening when you take out these big block quotes is your reader has to make this shift, this sustained shift. They're hearing your voice, hearing your claims, and then they have to spend the next 3 to 5 lines in someone else's voice, completely someone else's voice. And it throws them out, and then they have to come right back to your voice and get reacquainted. And my point is, because this essay is so short, you don't have a lot of time to lead your reader through those transitions in a way that feels natural. So if you have these big block quotes and they're not working, pare it down, zero in on exactly what you want to use from that quote. Find the most important part of that quote. Because a lot of the block quotes that I'm seeing are ending up feeling like space fillers. I've been thinking about this in the way that when I see, like I think of quarterbacks like Cam Newton. If he were to just throw the ball up and say, this will land in the right hands, I don't need to be precise, that wouldn't work, right? So think about these quotes as you being really precise, you throwing the ball exactly where you want it to go, it landing exactly where you want it to land, because your reader is not responsible for doing that work. You have to lead them through your reasoning. I hope that made sense. Okay, so take some time, highlight my voice in one color, outside voice in another. If it's really imbalanced right now, work to get more of your voice in there. So important. When you come back from doing that, we're going to go into this sentence openings chart. So I'd click that. And it's going to bring you up this document. Syntax is one of those words that it never helps to review because it sounds like a really scientific term. when I think of syntax, I think of arrangement. It's the way you set up a sentence. It's the way you set up a paragraph. It's an organizational technique, but it has a huge effect on pacing and tone and style. So it's really important. It's like having a really balanced diet. If you ate the same thing every day, you get really tired of it. In the same way, if you have the same sentence structure every time, the same number of words, if they're all really lengthy sentences or if they're all really choppy sentences, your reader's going to get bored really quick and they're going to book it. So this worksheet has you go back into your essay, and let's say you just start with one sentence. You write down the first 2 words. These are your sentence openings. If you look when you finish this chart, if you have the same sentence openings for like 10 sentences, immediately you know that's a problem. You need to rethink how you're opening these sentences. Is it with I believe, or this argument says, or first, second, finally, all things we've talked about in class that we need to start pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone and finding new ways to use transitional phrases and sentence openers. Once you write down those first 2 words, you can go into this section. If sentence type is something that you've had in classes before and you feel comfortable filling out this section, by all means do. If it's something that's really unfamiliar to you, don't worry about it. If it's something that's unfamiliar to you and you're curious, in the same argument final revision sections, there's a worksheet on the different type of sentences. So if this benefits you, do it. If not, let's go on to this section. You ask yourself, is this sentence a run-on? Is it a fragment? If it's a fragment, make sure you're doing it purposefully. Make sure it's not an accident or a fluke. Make sure you've done it purposefully. With run-ons, they work, you see them often in narrative. You see them in stream of consciousness. It's a really creative way to pace your reader. But it's very rare that you see them in argument papers, because strong arguments are very succinct and purposeful. And these are words that I keep repeating, but it's good to repeat these things. It's really hard to have run-on sentences in an argument paper because, again, your reader's going to get confused. If they're thinking maybe that sentence should have ended there, that's what they're going to be thinking about, not what you're saying in the rest of the sentence. If you're trying to address these run-ons, go back to your grammar packet. Start looking at those really cool pieces of grammar like semicolons and colons and dashes. They can be really, really powerful when you use them correctly. Moving on, look at the number of words in the sentence. And then when you go through this chart again, if every single sentence has upwards of 10 words, you know that's a problem. If every sentence has 5 words, that might be a problem. You want to see variation here and balance. This awkward section, yes or no, it's easiest for me to have someone else fill this part out for me because my writing doesn't automatically feel awkward to me because it mirrors the way my brain works, and this is, I think, true of a lot of writers. So this might be a section that's helpful to get a second pair of eyes on. It could be the time when you read a sentence into your phone and then listen back to it. Awkward is a subjective feeling, so I would recommend having someone else's eyes on this part. The last part of this little section reminds me that you could have an essay where you are doing everything. You're using this variation, you have intentional fragments, you're using really innovative wording that's making a really interesting pace for your reader. You're using every technique in the book, but if you do that and you're doing it without purpose, and I use the word intention, it's not going to be a good paper. So when you look at these argument boxes again, and you're using all these things, think, did I turn the paper over? Did I know why I was using these techniques? Because if no, your reader's going to feel that. So don't just do these techniques for the sake of doing them. Don't just do some kind of innovative new word choice or fragment because you think you need it in there. Do it with purpose. Okay, moving on. We would go back to these modules. And so again, it's this final revision. We're going to talk about paragraphing a little bit. Maybe this document come up. This worksheet has you kind of checking for 3 things: unity, coherence, and completeness, which are all kind of like cousins in the same family. They all work together. The biggest thing that I'm seeing in essays right now is there are paragraphs where I get about midway through and you make this big jump and it feels almost like this new topic, and I feel thrown off as a reader. There's not enough context provided to make that shift. And here it's helpful to go back and look at, do you remember this piece of writing that we looked at, my writing? This green section is where I just make this big shift. Supposedly I've been talking about immediate jobs and we as a nation need them. And then I make the shift saying the US would also be better off if they started looking into more renewable energy sources. And the reader's like, how did you get to renewable energy sources? So we go back down here, and what did I do? I started a new paragraph. I took that idea and turned it into a transition sentence into a new paragraph. So if you're wondering about these kind of transition terms and how maybe to do this, how to address this kind of confusion in these paragraphs, take a look back at these argument techniques color code doc. Coming back to this worksheet, looking for unity. In your mind, I want you to think of each paragraph as kind of a room in the house. And would you find a bed in the kitchen? Oftentimes, no. I mean, there's going to be times when maybe you do. But think of each sentence in your paragraph as an item in the kitchen. If the kitchen is the topic of this paragraph, you would not be surprised to find, you know, an oven, a microwave, a spatula. But then if you see that outlier, this bed, you're like, whoa, there's no context for this bed. Why is it here? It needs to be unified. It needs to all work together. And then just go through these directions like step by step, and they'll really help you. Highlight your topic sentence. It should only have one main idea. If it has more than one, suggest the true main idea to the author, which is you. You're talking to yourself. And this one's really helpful. Rereading the paragraph backwards. So read the last sentence first. Does it relate back to your topic sentence, your main idea? And then keep going, working backwards. In terms of coherence, this just means, are you being logical? Are you being consistent? Here are some of the techniques you can use that make for a coherent paragraph. We talked about transitional words or phrases briefly. Pronoun reference is a big one. If you are the type of writer who starts with saying, I am doing this, and then somehow in your paragraph you start saying you, it becomes confusing for the reader. So make sure if you're talking in I, you're going to stay there. The I to you shift is really hard. It's like a hard bridge to walk. So make sure that you're being consistent with your pronoun use. We've already talked a lot about repeating these key terms, but sometimes if you're in this kind of long, complex paragraph, it helps to repeat a key term and maybe redefine it for your reader. Give them a fresh perspective that reminds them what you're talking about in this paragraph. Parallelism is something that can be hard. I understand that. I'll put up a link to this site, which is really helpful, has a really great definition. Components of a sentence that are grammatically the same or similar in their construction, sound, meaning, or meter. And I wanted to return back to the Literacy of Long-Term Thinking, the Patterson piece.